All right. Well, good afternoon, good morning. This is my name is William Rogers. I'm the Safety Planning Coordinator at the Greater Nashville Regional Council. Today is a conversation with colleagues about vulnerable road users or active transportation users, and we're kind of looking beyond counts. So we know that there's a lot of efforts going into buying counters and wrangling the data from those counters and maintaining the counters, finding out what's the best place to put them, because we really rely on those counts. We don't have the same data that drivers populate, but there's tons of other ways that we can gather data as well. And so that's what we're going to look at today. How can we gather other data for safety, for other analysis? But thanks for joining. Here we go. So we're called the Bicycle and Pedestrian Data Subcommittee from the Transportation Research Board. The ACP72 is our code. And then we have several parent committees: the Highway Traffic Monitoring Committee, Pedestrians Committee, Bicycle Transportation Committee, and then Urban Transportation Data and Information Systems Committee. So we all support them, and they support us. And we're excited to host these conversations with you guys. There's going to be small presentations, but we want to reserve at least half the time to discussing these as a group. So feel free throughout the whole time to put your clarifying questions in the chat, any questions you have to the presenters, and then my other colleagues here will bring those up at the end. So we're going to have 3 presentations today, and then after those presentations, we can look in the chat and ask some questions to you guys. Before the ground rules, Catherine, would you like to introduce yourself and say any opening remarks if you'd like?
Sure. I'm Catherine Cordham. I am the TRB staff person who manages the parent committee, well, several of the parent committees here for this particular subcommittee. And I am just looking forward mostly to listening and learning alongside all of y'all. Happy to answer any TRB questions either now or at any point.
Thanks for joining. I'm glad you can make it. So ground rules, feel free to ask questions. Like I said, you're invited to share your experience and how this might be applicable in your state, your agency, or maybe some things that you'd like us to see. These are people that I know in Tennessee and around the country that I know are working in this space, but I'm just one person. So please, send us your ideas on other ways that we can talk about this same topic. We're going to have at least 2 of these conversations going forward. So feel free to submit ideas and ask more questions. Yeah. If you're not speaking, please mute. We can, if it gets too busy, we can start raising hands. But I think that Nate and Tony can facilitate that at the end. And the chat is also great for links and useful resources. So these are the 3 participants today. We'll have the slides and the recording at the end, but these are people that I've worked with in the past few years. A lot of respect for them. Dr. Mina Sartipi is the founding director of the Center for Urban Informatics and Progress. I just learned that university is about to get a quantum computer, so I'm excited to see what they're going to do with that. But tons of great work coming out of that area. There's this hotbed and smart corridor that they're working with. Dr. Work is here at Vanderbilt in Nashville. He's done some great work on Interstate 24 with machine learning. It's awesome stuff. And also LiDAR and other stuff with the Nashville Department of Transportation, which is where Anna is from. She's the walking and biking manager there. And then Trevor Whitley is CEO of LiDAR Matrix. So I will stop sharing. And Dr. Sartipi, are you here to present? If you are, you can start sharing.
I am here. And hello, let me, okay. Do you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Now do you see the right view or the wrong view?
I still see the slides on the left.
You still see the slide. Okay. Is this okay to keep it like this, or do you want me to make the presentation? Okay. So if it's large enough so that, good afternoon. And as William mentioned, Mina Sartipi, I'm at the University of Tennessee, Chattanooga, and we are excited about quantum as well. But I think today I'm going to talk about VRUs and LiDAR. So I'm going to stick to the topic. So I'm going to be talking about, and I know I have 10 minutes, so I'm going to be quick, talking about how we have deployed technology in Chattanooga with the goal of protecting VRUs and improving urban mobility. So I start with saying that this research was not started as just doing a research because we were interested in the topic. Of course, we were interested in the topic, but this is also very much aligned with what the city had as the vision when we started working at COIP about almost 6 years ago. One of the vision for us is to have a citywide testbed for future of transportation, which includes obviously all modes of transportation, including the VRUs, and how can we enhance quality of life being an area that we can be really economic development and bringing private and public partners together to really being able to work on these projects. But how did it start? Back in 2016, we received an NSF award because of, it was like basically was, if you have access to gigabit internet, how would you leverage it to improve the quality of life in your city? And the topic we had back there was how can we have fleet management of connected and autonomous vehicle? And it was basically in an urban setting, in like, how can we improve the safety? And we needed, as a requirement for this grant, we needed to actually do a live demo. And so we needed a test bed to be able to do the live demo. This is a street on campus. My college sits right north of here. This is street. So we had help with APB, which is provide our fiber, and the city, and we deployed 3 poles, and all it was really access points and cameras. And as you can see, some of them, we needed a larger view and we didn't have it. So we actually had our students holding a QR code. So these were our reference points to tell us where every pedestrian and cars were, and we were using that for connectivity. And this was this was actually actual demo that we did, was how can we see, we call it see-through, basically allowing cameras of the vehicles to share data with each other so you can see through the car in front of you through that. And that we tested it to saw that like the number of seconds faster you would know a person is in front of you. So in the case on top, you're not going to be passing that vehicle because it's slowed down because you didn't know what was going on, but they slowed down because of the pedestrian, or when you're turning and what's coming up. So this was a research that got actually cities' attention, and they wanted to see that, okay, what are the things that we can do with them in terms of some of the work. And this were, they wanted to work on the Vision Zero, sustainability, and improving the traffic flow. But the challenge was really the data. Like, how would we have the data and diversity of the data? What was the quality of the data? And could it be real time? That we wanted to also having an environment that, okay, we could understand what are the challenges, but could we also like test different scenarios, different solutions that can mitigate them, and would they actually have an impact? And really having something that would be scalable. So that's when we, our goal was addressing these urban challenges with data-driven approaches. And as I mentioned, collaborate really with private and public partners. And that is when we started working on our testbed. So what you see here is the plan is we having a citywide testbed, but what we have already in the work as we speak is about whole area of the downtown area is about 130 some intersections. Some of these has been updated since this slide, but we started with MLK Smart Corridor, and this intersection sits right here at the intersection of MLK and Georgia. And we deployed different technology. We started with actually cameras. We put different cameras with different resolution, different height, different angle to understand really what is really needed. And eventually we deployed LiDAR. I'll talk about that. Some of the intersections also have additional thermal camera, for example. We have audio sensors, we have air quality, and also we have connectivity capability. So we have, we started with DSRC, but now we have changed them to CV2X. And then we, in addition to the part of the downtown, and you can see different colors because those were the different versions of technology deployment. And then we also have a portion of the highway here, which we have a long-range LiDAR deployed, and also camera and CV2X. So those were also additional technology that we wanted to be able to see that, okay, we did a lot of research on the urban environment, but what about the highway? So that was added. And one thing that it was, in addition to deploying the technology, was really the data infrastructure behind it, because we actually have partners both from academic and industry that they want to have access to the data, so we have this testbed as a service. Basically, is a cloud-based platform that provide access to that others can have access to the data from other locations. So there's a SDK that you can have access to the data, both real time and also historical data. So the very first project when we set up the MLK was pedestrian safety, and this was defined. This contract between UTC and city was signed in 2018. So we, as part of the MLK that I mentioned, that we deployed a camera, they really wanted to understand how safe the streets are for pedestrians. So and Vision Zero, as I mentioned, was high on the list. So that was like, okay, so can we measure the near misses? And I'm going to show you a short video from a few years ago, but the challenges that we saw was actually really how to calculate the speed very accurately, and obstructions. I'm going to show you both of those, and also during sometimes during the time of the day and such, the vision on the camera was not as accurate, and also environmental impact of it. But this is a short video that, again, this is from a few years ago, that all we did in this case was obviously detecting the object, classify it, and also predicting their trajectory. So what you see in the front was the trajectory. And this was a project that we actually, when we did with the city, there was the cases like the left turns getting too close to pedestrian. And in this case, we were like, at the beginning, we were really focusing on pedestrian more than other VRUs. And this was when we talked with the city and they came and changed some of the left turn timing, or they added protective left turns in some of the intersections along the corridor based on the data that we have provided. Another thing that we also understood based on this was a lot of the wrong way. So a lot of cars, if you have been Chattanooga, you know this intersection is a little bit different. Instead of going to the right lane that they should go, they went to the left lane. So those were all like the communications that we had with the city based on the data that we were able to provide to them. But because of those challenges that I did mention, we decided to deploy LiDAR. And so the first deployment of LiDAR was 2021. This is the same intersection that I was showing you. That is the left turn was from here to here. So that was the left turn. That was a challenge. And we decided to deploy 2 LiDARs at each of these intersections that are 13 intersections along the corridor. And these were the 2 original locations that we deployed them. And we've the findings that were very first early on findings was we had a much higher reliability in different lighting conditions. The performance was fairly good in adverse weather. It improved in the resolution and the range, and like you get the 3D perception of the environment. And also the other thing was privacy. What I didn't mention was we did quite a bit of study at the beginning before any cameras went up, was in community engagement and citizen engagement. This is a real world. This is somebody's house, somebody's business, and this was like privacy was a major issue. So no camera data has been ever stored, and we keep them. Even if we keep them, it's a very short amount of time just for evaluating our algorithms and drop them. But every event and every understanding of that is what we keep. And so with that, like one of the things that I want to show you, this is like a very recent, I just had it for this meeting, that like one example is with the LiDAR. So this is the view of the LiDAR, and we have, as I mentioned, we have 2 of them. So this is the same intersection. This is 1 and this is 2. And we can see that while we can detect all the object, but when there's obstruction, you won't be able to see it. But with the LiDAR, because of the way we fuse the LiDARs, we are able to see that. But one challenge, one thing that we are still doing it to this day, and we plan to continue it, is the fusion. We do data fusion to enhance what LiDAR can see, like in terms of sub-classification. So what you see here, because VRU is high on our list, we want to make sure that we do detect scooters and wheelchairs, bikes and everything, and detect them accurately. So that is where we are actually fusing the data from camera and LiDAR. And if you're interested, I can talk about it another time. We don't have time today, but it's like we can do also late and early. So it's we do both of those fusions. But the sub-classification, I will talk about it in a second, it will come from the camera. So we detect with the LiDAR and do the sub-classification with the camera. And these are examples of what you see here. Like this was an example of how we do the assessing the risk. So what we do is using the sensors that we have, LiDARs or cameras, and in this case, both of them, we detect the object, we classify it, we predict their trajectory, and then we assess the risk. And this is what you're seeing, that we are assessing the risk. In this case was a pedestrian and a vehicle. And this shows actually the time-space diagram that we are using to detect the PET. And or this is another case that you see that this is the red light. This car actually passed red light, and that's what this red happened. So this was the red light runner that it was almost going to be an accident, and this is where this alert had happened. So. And then finally, I want to mention that in addition to these intersections that we have fixed infrastructure, we also have a mobile unit. And this has also been very helpful in a sense that when city or university, in actually 2 cases, we have worked with the university directly when they had told us where are the areas that they feel like it's not safe for crossing. And we collect the data, and then we talk with the city or with the university police to see that how can we address them. One such area was this part of the campus. So the north part of this street is our campus. The south is the parking and dorms. And there was nothing here, and 2 intersections are far apart from each other. And when we deployed the mobile unit right here at this corner, and they saw that in 3 days, 518 mid-block crossings, 207 5-second PET and 33 2-second PET. So this is when we figured out, okay, so this is not safe. This is something needs to happen. Thankfully, there has not been any accident, and usually that is the case. We wait to see if an accident happened, then we are being more reactive. But this is a case that we were able to understand this proactively. And then we talked with the city. Oh, and I have the wrong picture, sorry. But what they did is all they did was paint a crosswalk there. And after that, you can see that this needed to be rotated. You can see that it's still the same number of another 3 days, the same number of mid-block crossing, but 0 near misses. And I pass by this all the time because of my offices. You see that actually people would not walk to the upstream or that, like the intersections, but they do actually use that intersection. So you can see the impact of that. And this is, and we are, as I mentioned, we have done it in another area on campus, and also we are collecting data on some other part of the city as well. And what's next for us is, as I mentioned, we are expanding this LiDAR deployment to other intersections. We are going to be doing a small scale deployment also in Cleveland. And finally, when I mentioned that like warnings happen, one of the other topics that we are working on is how do we communicate that back? So these are like the cases that we would see that there is a near miss, there is a PET, or there is a warning, but how do we communicate back? And that the CV2X technology that I did mention as a part of the SMART grant that City of Chattanooga with other partners that we have has received is working on that connectivity. With that, I think I'm on time, but
thank you. Dan and Anna, are y'all ready?
Yeah, Dan, I think it actually might make sense for you to go first, and then I will kind of zoom out for us.
All right, that will work just fine. Let's see if the screen share I can get to work. Let's give this a shot. Hopefully you're all seeing my desktop. And then 3, 2, 1.
Yeah, there you go.
Looking good, like a title slide. All right. Well, it's perfect to pick up on Mina's presentation. I want to share some of the work that she and I have been working on behalf of the Nashville Department of Transportation on a project called LATAMS, which is looking at using LiDAR to improve collection of vulnerable road users, much in the same spirit of what you just saw. I'm Dan Work. I'm a professor here at Vanderbilt, but I'm sharing the results on behalf of the team, just so you can get a sense of who all is involved. This is a Nashville DOT-led initiative supported by Tennessee Department of Transportation, Tennessee State University, UT Chattanooga, Vanderbilt. Ouster is the LiDAR manufacturer. AECOM is the project manager helping with delivery, and Stansel Electric are the folks that actually put the sensors up on the poles and make them all work. The origin of the project is very similar. I mean, you start looking at all the different crash data sources, and it's pretty obvious that if the crash doesn't get reported, there's a gap in your visibility, and nobody wants to wait for a statistically significant number of people to get injured in order to identify that you have an issue. So this whole wave of trying to look at new technologies, whether they're camera or LiDAR, to detect these vulnerable road users, the near misses, opens up a whole new wave of actual technologies that work today. I think folks have been thinking about these things for a long period of time, but I think as Mina has shown you, and hopefully I can add a little bit of fuel to the fire, the technologies now are at a point of maturity where out of the box, you can do really amazing things with collecting information about how people are using the infrastructure. And just to kind of like put this in the most visible way possible, here you have raw LiDAR point clouds with a classification of a person walking across the street and vehicles that travel on that same roadway very close nearby. Literally, this was like 24 hours after the installation of the first LiDAR sensors in Nashville. Obviously, the team in Chattanooga has been way ahead of the curve here. This is the kind of stuff that we start looking at. And I want to show this mostly just so that you can ideate. If this is the resolution of information you can get, you're pretty much only limited by your imagination in terms of what types of things you can calculate. Out of crosswalk events, where people are using the infrastructure, speeding, what kind of vehicle types are using the infrastructure, kind of the sky's the limit. One thing that we've done in Nashville is tried to unify all this information in the same field of view. So there's a live visualization toolbox that our team here at Vanderbilt has been helping deliver for Nashville DOT, which takes the 8 install locations where we have these LiDARs as part of the US DOT Smart Grant Stage 1. And you can interact on the map and see where all of the vehicles are. Because transit's a really important mode of transportation here in Nashville. We skin the buses anytime we detect them to look like our local transit agency. If you see a little purple box, and I know we're floating around here a bit, but all the pedestrians are visualized as purple boxes. The buses look like buses. The vehicles are color-coded based on the speed. And part of the reason we show this live data, it's useful in a variety of ways. One, it helps us in the field calibrate the sensors and make sure that they're working correctly. 2, it actually gives us something that we can plug into the traffic management center, and instead of hearing about a complaint and driving over to see it, you can just be there virtually in this field of view. So really helpful in terms of visualizing the information, but where it gets really impactful is where you take the data and you start to think about how to quantify some of the issues on the roadway. Nashville DOT also has a mobile LiDAR trailer so that in places where you just want to do a quick measurement, get in and get out and get some analysis done, you can. So one of the examples here is a bike lane area where folks in Nashville DOT wanted to know how that infrastructure is being used. And fine, you drop the mobile LiDAR trailer in place. 24 hours later, you've got a high fidelity time series of where all the people are walking across the street. And then, like I said, you let your imagination run wild. You just draw 2 boxes of 2 different crosswalks across the roadway, 6th Avenue and Shelby Avenue, and you can get the 24-hour ped counts in real time. But that's not all. As Mina showed you, you can get that near miss information. This is an example of a surrogate safety measure called a post encroachment time, but it shows you all the places where cars and people almost were involved in a crash, and you start to accumulate the statistics of the unsafe settings that you can then pull out tools out of the Vision Zero toolbox to intervene. One thing that we're lucky here in Nashville is we have an awful lot of people. So one of the initiatives we've done in the last few months is a popular neighborhood in Nashville. It's a 12 South neighborhood. We moved that mobile LiDAR trailer to 4 different locations along the corridor, and then we're able to get pedestrian counts at each of those locations. And the numbers here, these are the 24-hour counts of pedestrians. So you can really see the volume of people that are using this infrastructure is pretty significant. And just to drill down, we were seeing peak 15-minute counts of 400 pedestrians on this infrastructure. And as busy as this community is, it pales in comparison to Broadway in downtown Nashville, which is a really popular entertainment district, so popular that the pedestrian volumes at some points get so dense we have to shut down the roadway to keep those vulnerable road users protected. So we took the mobile LiDAR trailer, stuck it on Broadway. Instead of looking at a peak 15-minute count of 400 people, we were seeing more than 150 people at one instant in time on Broadway. So think about just the power of being able to, for the first time, instead of just painting the roads yellow, green, and red based on whether the traffic is moving quickly or slowly, think about being able to calculate those same kind of information on your sidewalks, on your bike lanes. LiDAR, some of the advanced camera technologies that are coming online. I mean, these are things that can happen today. And I think hopefully you've seen 2 examples here from Chattanooga and Nashville that are basically showing that the technology has really reached an inflection point where we can do a lot of the things that we've aspired to do for the longest time. I'll leave it there and be happy to take any questions at the end if there's time. Thank you.
Thanks. Anna, you want to go next if you're ready?
All right, can you all see my title slide here?
Yeah.
Perfect. So I'm Anna Dearman, walking and biking manager at NDOT, and I'm going to zoom out a little bit and describe really an application of these technologies and a system-wide approach.
If you can see if you can go into presenter mode, they'll make it a little bigger.
Yeah, let's see here. Is that better?
Yes.
All right. So just sort of to add some why and some what do we do with this behind this technology, we have started looking countywide at our overall safety picture. So Nashville, as many communities have, adopted Vision Zero in 2022. We used a sort of retrospective crash history-based approach to develop a high injury network. Some of the challenges of that are that we don't know really what to do when and where in order to prevent crashes. Obviously, crash history is going to correlate, at least to an extent, with crash risk, but it's really not the most upstream approach to just address crashes based on history. And so we have started in updating our high injury network to look at the areas of highest risk for kinetic energy transfer resulting in serious injury and fatal crash outcomes. And so here we're looking at big data variables around exposure to crashes, the likelihood that you'll be exposed to a crash, and then the severity of that likely crash. We'll be ground truthing some of this geospatial analysis with the LiDAR technology and sort of triangulating around what we believe we're seeing in the field. This analysis will help us determine not just where we have seen crashes, but where we're likely to see crashes. This will help us as we're developing our updated layered multimodal streets network. We're updating our strategic plans for delivering projects. We're updating which projects we prioritize and exactly what our policies look like to separate people in space and time and to prevent crashes rather than simply addressing crash history. This is what that geospatial data analysis looks like. It's not directly incorporating LiDAR data on a countywide basis. We don't have that technology available, and it's likely not possible to scale that technology countywide at this time, but it will help us to sample certain areas and ensure that what we think we're seeing in this geospatial analysis bears out in, a single example or maybe a couple of examples in the field. Our timeline is this summer moving into fall, so it'll align well with deployment of some of our SMART grant LiDAR technology, and certainly as we scale up the mobile LiDAR trailers. That's really all I have. I just wanted to provide sort of a zoomed out county-wide or community-wide application of these tools. We're really glad to be collaborating with Vanderbilt and other partners on these data collection and analysis efforts.
Thank you, guys. Trevor, are you there to present? I think I saw you join earlier.
Yeah, I'm right here. Sorry I'm late. My calendar, I was in a different time zone last week and it didn't update, so I was thinking it was 12 o'clock that the meeting was at. So yeah, thanks for that reminder though. But yeah, so I'll share my screen and get started here. All right, so my name is Trevor. So I'm with LiDAR Matrix, and that's really just a company that's born out of the University of Nevada, Reno. And our program has done a lot of research and work with LiDAR technology. That seems to be the kind of main theme of today, well, one of the main themes anyway. And so we've been doing that for, I guess, since 2016, where we've been, applying on the roadside for permanent or temporary installations, which I'll mostly be kind of focusing on like the temporary data collection platforms that we use so that we can, use them for more practical projects and kind of scale them up or scale them down as needed, depending on the project need. All right, yeah, it's a little slow there. So just kind of a background on the technology. I mean, you guys probably now at this point are pretty familiar with LiDAR technology, but it's basically scanning the surrounding environments 360 degrees and being able to get a good scan of not only the background images, or background, buildings, streets, things like that, but specifically the moving road users, which is kind of what we're mostly focused on, like your vehicles, your bike ped, and anything in between. So we've been doing a lot of work in the Nevada area. However, we're just starting to kind of break out of that quite a bit this year. And so you can see here in the Reno and the Las Vegas area is kind of our main domain. However, we've done plenty of rural data collection. We've deployed trailers. We've done permanent installations and real-time systems as well. But what I really want to focus on is what we do on our portable system. So this is kind of what that looks like over here on the right side of your screen. So this basically is completely disconnected from the power. So it basically supplies its own power through processing unit and batteries. And with different battery configurations, we can get up to 2 weeks of continuous data. So what's great about this is that you can easily scale this up to 20, 30, 40, 50, maybe even over 100 if you wanted to. Sensors, maybe if it's along a corridor, if you want to get the whole entire like downtown network, there's definitely many options. It's great for, like a neighborhood plan where maybe you don't have as many places to install them, for permanent installation or long-term installation. It's good for mid-block locations for multiple reasons. Another one being that it's not affected by any lighting conditions. So obviously it's going to emit its own laser light source and essentially have no effect day or night. And another benefit is that it's anonymous data. So depending on, the sensitivity of the area, that might be a benefit as well. So, getting into kind of the different data elements that we can pull from it. So once we have that LiDAR data, which, based on some of the previous presentations, you can kind of visualize what that looks like. It's essentially, a cluster of points that makes up different road users, and you can kind of track how they're moving and stuff. So one thing we do is, we have post-processing where we are obviously going to be, clustering all those points that, are the points we care about. So like the moving road users. And then we're going to classify them based on their shape and size and distribution of points. so that we can, identify the vehicles versus the pedestrians and bicyclists and scooters and so forth. So once we have that, we're able to get a good idea of all the movements, and we can visualize them based on trajectory points, and we can map them into GIS and get an idea of the different movement patterns. So over here on the left, we can see this is just converting pedestrian crossing movements into a heat map along, and this is just using one LiDAR sensor. We can get really good coverage along this sort of park in the downtown Reno area, and see generally where different pedestrians are crossing at, essentially getting the idea of the desire line. So we do have crosswalks up here and down in this region. However, we don't have any crosswalks there. However, it almost looks like it's leading into the path is sort of ending at this roadway, and it kind of sort of continues here, but there's nowhere for them to cross that's marked. So you see a lot of that sort of crossing movement information. The same is kind of true over here, where we see this trail that kind of leads into the roadway, but doesn't actually extend through it. So, I mean, obviously that's just giving you an idea of the different movement patterns. And maybe you can make some changes to, the roadway accordingly if you find that that is leading to significant safety concerns. Similarly, we can take a look at the movements of micromobility. So I call that bikes, scooters, anyone who's on some sort of a vehicle or some sort of a, moving object that is not necessarily motorized or, not like a vehicle or a motorcycle or anything like that. So this is essentially going to be breaking down, in this case, the bicycles and scooters. So from this data, we can really get a good idea of, the movement patterns, and we can, isolate different ones that we find most interesting or ones that are more anomalous and see, why those behaviors are happening. What's kind of unique about bike and scooters or any combination of those is that, they can act both as like a pedestrian on the sidewalks or crosswalks, but they can actually also act as somewhat as a vehicle where they're doing like turning movements. So being able to see how they traverse that environment. So oftentimes they might start on the roadway and then go into the sidewalk, or they might dip in maybe to let vehicles pass. So you can get really into that micro level detailed information to see how the behaviors are and how we can, shape the infrastructure to enhance their experience or allow them to, traverse it with a less level of stress, if you will. So other data elements we can get is doing really detailed crosswalk analysis. So things like to what extent vehicles are yielding to pedestrians. So this is an example where we looked at it at a PHB, and a PHB is kind of unique in the sense that it's requiring that vehicles stop and yield for the pedestrians. So we can break that down by pulling in the signal status information with the non-yield or yield compliance events. So we can see like during the signal break when it's maybe dark, when there's no, PHB is not, in use, we can see what the non-yield events are, which is not necessarily a non-yield event, but it's a situation where a pedestrian is showing their intent to yield, or showing their intent to cross, but vehicles are not yielding for them. We can look at the example, which is probably the most severe one, is they're not yielding when it's a steady red, meaning vehicles need to stop. And then you can look at a bunch of different other options like the alternating red, where it's a wigwag red, which vehicles can go if there's no pedestrians on the crosswalk. However, they still should remain stopped if there is a pedestrian. So we can get really this nuanced level of information if we can pull in the signal information. And this also applies to your traditional, traffic signals as well. So we can do similar analysis. So this is easier in the sense that there's actually no signals at these particular mid-block crosswalks. But if you wanted to take a look at motorist yield compliance or yield rates, and this is looking at basically the vehicles, intent, or sorry, when the pedestrians are showing intent to cross, what are the vehicles doing? And obviously we want to make sure we're, extracting or filtering out those situations where the stopping sight distance doesn't allow them to safely come to a stop. So we want to make sure we're getting accurate yield compliance. And if we're getting very low yield compliance, that's leading to a low kind of level of service for pedestrians and a level of stress for them to be able to cross. And of course, also increasing pedestrian delay, which can also lead to unsafe maneuvers, both from pedestrians and vehicles as well. So understanding these sort of nuanced crossing behaviors is very important, especially at those mid-block locations. So we can see here, just breaking down the different yield compliance or yield rates. This is along the same corridor in a 1.2 mile stretch in kind of a commercial downtown area or commercial area of Reno, Nevada. And actually, it's interesting. We can see that some of the ones that have, a little more built out areas, so like the refuge or the skewed crosswalk, we do see slightly higher percentages. So you can even break this down by like the directional information too, to see to what extent there's some sight distance issues that might be leading to it. But yeah, you can really get into the weeds of something like this. All right. And of course, we can also look at conflicts, near misses, close interactions, however you want to name them. But essentially, when we use PET, post encroachment time, we're able to kind of measure to what extent, when two road users' movements are crossing each other's path, how close they're getting based on a time. So that's essentially what we call post encroachment time. And so we can see some examples just pulling out different road users involved in different near misses, identified in different locations in the Reno area. This is just showing examples of what they might look like. So obviously you have your very common permissive left turn, vehicle to vehicle collision. However, you can get similar ones for bicyclists, obviously, as well. Your standard, pedestrian crossing and vehicle yielding. And then even looking at like micromobility to pedestrian, near misses, because obviously there's a little bit of level of like, especially if a scooter is traveling on the sidewalk where you have maybe a lot of pedestrian activity, it might lead to some safety concerns between scooters and pedestrians. So that's another kind of very nuanced behavior that you can look at as well. So, if you wanted to map like all the points related to different, conflicts, particularly when we look at vulnerable road users, this is kind of what it would look like if you're looking at a multi-day period. And, this might look like quite a lot. And of course, we can convert this into a heat map, but this goes to show just how, how these interactions can occur. And in this case, I think I used a PET of up to 3 seconds. And so you can obviously use, filtering out for like lower PETs. If, for example, if you see ones that are less than 2 or 1.5 seconds, that's going to be a lot more of a dangerous or a closer interaction than one that's, say, 3 seconds. But regardless, this is still giving you kind of a measure of closeness between vehicles and vulnerable road users, which gives us an idea of which movements, which areas of the intersection are leading to these closer interactions. And then you can also bring in things like the conflict angle, like what direction they were traveling when this happened, what movements vehicles were doing, were they doing a right turn movement versus a through movement, because a through movement would indicate that if they did get struck, they'd roll over the car, versus if they were turning, if they got hit, they would kind of roll off of the side of the vehicle. So that's kind of when you would map conflicts with crashes, how that might be able to correlate. And then obviously speed is a very important one as well.
All right, well, I'm going to cut you off there. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, sure. That's pretty much all I had anyway. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for presenting, everybody. This is really exciting to see it take off in Nevada and Tennessee, and I'm sure it's happening elsewhere in the U.S. But I'll hand it over to Tony to facilitate the question.
Yeah, thanks, Will. And I will go through. There's a number of things in the chat that I'll address real quick. We got about 24 folks today, so the conversational part, I think, will work best if folks have questions or want to interject things, to use the hand raise. I will encourage, if you'd like to, just go ahead and turn your cameras on if you want. This is more of a meeting than a presentation here. And one of the first things that came up was actually several people were inquiring about whether the slides are available to share. I will suggest that if they are available to share, the caveat for us is we don't have a registration page for this, so we're not able to send a bulk email out to everybody. So I will encourage the presenters, if you're able to share your slides, to go ahead and indicate that in the chat, and then also put your email so folks can sort of copy that in and follow up that way. One of the questions, I'm just running back through here. The first one also, I think, Mina, during your presentation, there was an interest in whether or not a link to the data that you were using is available for sharing, or whether that was proprietary to the project team.
The data will be available, but we do have, and it's on the website, I can put it here. We would need to have a data user agreement to be filled out, and then we will be able to share that. Yes. That's
great. Thank you. And then actually, I think, Brian Wood, you had an interesting comment that I think is probably for a lot of folks. Looking at this near miss analysis obviously looks at everything as objects and trajectories. And the question, I guess, is more about trying to understand factors or behaviors or things that people might be doing. And I suspect that that's a limitation, but I'd welcome one of the panelists to chime in about how you account for the sort of factors that lead up to the behaviors. Or I should
Sure,
call him
I'll jump in.
There's somebody under
Okay.
the bus.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think that they're like near miss calculations are not perfect, period. I'll give a very concrete example. These post-encroachment times that I think a lot of us are really excited about the potential for. Here's an example that creates an infinite post-encroachment time, i.e. not a safety problem. You put a person on the sidewalk and then you drive a freight truck by that vehicle at 70 miles an hour. The pedestrian and the truck never cross paths. The post-encroachment time is infinite, and not a single one of us would feel safe in that situation. So the post-encroachment times, they're proxies for safety. But I think that the reason that we're interested in post-encroachment time to collision, I mean, there's 50 others, and I think papers that date back to 1960 that explore these alternative views of trying to get something that would be predictive of unsafe situations rather than reactive is exactly that. It's the possibility of creating ways to intervene before the problems exist in spite of those flaws. It's never going to be perfect, but the alternative, waiting for people to get statistically significantly hit, is also not something that we can continue to support. All the subtleties that I think that are being raised in the question, I actually love. I mean, that's like good research question, good research question. What about intent? What about good actors, bad actors? I mean, wide open. I'd say there's lots of papers that have already been written on aspects of these topics, but the difference now is that we can link them to empirical data, and that's where we can separate out what's actually working well and what's not. So I hope I've partially addressed the question. I don't have the full answer because it's still in the early stages, but it's really the technology that's opening up the possibility to think about these in a meaningful way instead of just theoretically.
I suspect that's as good as we can answer it at this point. So good job, Dan. Also, Will had a couple of things. Dr. Sartepi, I think this is interesting too, in terms of looking at the changes in the crosswalk. Is there a way, or have you thought about how to quantify how many people changed their path or started using the crosswalk, looking at the before and after data?
All we were able to do, and we are going to do another round when school starts again, the new school year starts. We're going to set up the mobile unit back there to really, what we saw was the same number of people crossed, but almost all of them actually went through the crosswalk versus none. And that's all we could quantify at this point. But we're going to be doing it again with some new students coming again. Those are actually one of the dorms is for freshman students. That like, how are they going to be? But I think the fact that there is actually an area for them to cross, because before was just like either go up or down, like to actual signalized intersection, that has been helpful. But
yeah, it improves some things that we know about proximity of crosswalks being an important factor. Another question here, and I will encourage folks also, if you want to raise your hand, if you have something you want to share, Nathan and Will and I will address that. The other thing that was interesting, and this is another Will question, but I think that's kind of interesting too. When you were looking at the PEDs on Broadway, I think that's for you, Dan. How well are you able to track the individual? Is there a way to trajectory like what folks are doing? And I'll add to that because I think sometimes there's an interest also in understanding dwelling behavior and things when you were looking at plazas. Is it able to track individually, or is it just sort of blobs?
Yeah, the subtle question gets into a little bit of the details, but the LiDAR basically bounces light off of things and then takes those point clouds and estimates what it is, a person on a bicycle, vehicle, and so on. The sensor is line of sight. So if you get super dense crowds and you get it low enough and you can't see the person, then you are depending on the sophisticated inference algorithms that try to keep track of things that you can't see. And then so when you reappear them, you can then associate that the thing I saw over there is the same thing I saw over here. And in between, I lost track of it, but I know people don't instantaneously disappear on the roadway. That gets to where the research is a little bit more like advanced. It happens in computer vision. Cameras are line of sight sensors, happens in LiDAR, same kind of subtlety. In lower density settings, we have done validation as part of that USDOT grant. We had a team of people that did nothing all afternoon except walk across the street, and we manually tracked how well the LiDAR mapped to the pedestrian counts, and it's excellent. But I'll again give the word of caution. I mean, if you put it in a dense enough environment, you're going to see degradation just because, the person that's only getting one light beam bounced off of them is relatively hard to identify that it is a person rather than just something. And then I guess the last compliment, if you come through Nashville on a totally unrelated project, everything we've presented here, actually the LiDAR manufacturers, some of them are starting to show up in places like the airports to do exactly pedestrian queue estimation in places like how long is it going to take me to get through TSA? And for that, you do need to track the person all the way through the barriers so that you can get an estimate of what their wait time was. So still in the early days, but I hope I'm trying to give some indication of where things are headed.
No, it's similar challenges to other technologies, but very interesting. We have a couple of hands raised. I think Bob, yours was first. So Bob, if you want to chime in, and then I'll go to Sarisha.
I think Sarisha was first. Go ahead,
I'm sorry, Sarisha. I saw your hand first.
Yeah.
That's okay. Thanks, Bob and Tony. Great presentation. Thanks for that. I guess I have a question to maybe all the speakers. Can you speak a little bit about, the challenges with building the software to extract all these, events, the near misses and the other metrics that you've been talking about? I'm assuming that this is just not like you can set the LiDAR device out and it's just not a plug and play thing, right? That you have to have some applications that you are developing as a part of this. So if you could speak to that.
So in our case, and I think we'd probably be close to what Nashville is doing as well, the company that we have their LiDAR is called Alster. They do have Blue City, which is their software company, that they actually develop the algorithm for the 3D perception. Having said that, we do also build algorithm on top of that. On top of some of the 3D perception results of that, we do build some of it, but some of those come with the hardware as well. So you will be able to do some plug and play for some applications.
Excellent. Go ahead, Bob.
Sure. Yeah, thanks for the great presentations. Really exciting what's going on with LiDAR. Trevor, in your presentation, you gave your LiDAR a 300-foot radius, and Dan, you were talking about some of the limitations to having the height of the LiDAR unit get blocked by people or other things. What is the range, do you think, that's reliable for the LiDAR to detect pedestrians, especially? Is 300 feet, like out to 300 feet, like 95% confident in terms of counting somebody, or is there some range where it diminishes? Just want to get a sense of that.
Yeah, that's a good question. And I do think, yeah, like as you get further out from the LiDAR sensor, the density of points will get more sparse. That's why we kind of like, 300 feet is sort of like an estimate that we would be willing to go out, but it can depend on the site, the sensor. But, in general, we're still able to get pretty good accuracy, close to 300 feet. So it really comes down to, I think it's still like a really good, distance to be able to capture. And then, obviously with our system, we're able to string along multiple sensors and be able to get that coverage. So I don't know, someone else that maybe kind of dives into that sort of the difference, as you get further away from the sensor might be able to speak to that a bit more. But yeah, there will be a slight degradation of data the further out you go. That could be, combated by a higher, channel sensor where you can keep having the density of points be still adequate enough the further out you go. Does that kind of answer the question a little bit?
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, the sensors give you like useless information, but are technically like lab tested, right? So you'll get this kind of reflectivity at 90 feet. You'll get this kind of reflectivity at 90 meters. You'll get this kind of reflectivity further, right? And what you really want to know is like, is it going to find a person or not? And the threads that you're hearing here, different manufacturers of LiDAR are going to be able to do different things with the beam of light and put more pixels in a narrower or give you a wider field of view so that you can capture stuff in space and below. I don't know why you would care, but whatever, right? But then the reality is just that. Like, I can tell you perfectly well, I can detect a pedestrian at 80 meters, 90 meters, whatever it ends up being. And then I go and put you like 80% occluded by a box truck and ask you to do the same thing, and you wonder why it doesn't work. And it's because you've changed the environmental conditions on which, like, how many beams of light are actually being bounced off the person. So it really is can't give you a straight answer to a straight question, other than to give the, manufacturer specs. But it's all going to depend on how dense the environment is and what else is in the scene.
Yeah, and to add to that, I mean, when we have our algorithms, like the density, how we classify is based off the density and the distribution of points, and that's also going to be a function of how far away, like the distance to the sensor. So that, obviously a threshold that you might have for the density is going to be different if it's right next to the sensor versus if it is up to 300 feet. So, as long as we're able to kind of have good enough points further out, our algorithm's going to be able to account for that. And especially if, the field of view, field of vision is adequate, and the object is moving, we're able to certainly track that and be able to isolate, all those moving objects and then classify them based off of that distribution and density of points.
Well, it looks like, wow, we're getting quickly to the top of the hour, so I'll ask Will to go ahead and put up the closing screen. But one of the things, and I think that's touching on what you were just talking about, Trevor, I think Liz was asking about the role of machine learning for the technologies and how much of it actually works with the machine learning to sort of improve the algorithm versus having to do, I guess, almost manual observation, and what that looks like.
Yeah, I mean, I could speak to this a little bit. I didn't really develop all the machine learning algorithms behind it, but I do kind of understand how they work. But, in terms of the sort of process for it, we would isolate like the background information so that we can isolate all those moving road users. And then, as I mentioned before, just based on the density of those points and the distribution of those points, obviously, a pedestrian is going to be more vertically distributed than, a vehicle is going to be more horizontally distributed, and anything in between. So we're able to obviously feed algorithms based off of, isolating those different road users to be able to then classify those different road users into, your pedestrian, bicycle, and your vehicle. I think there was someone in the chat mentioning the difference between like a scooter and a pedestrian, and they're both very vertically distributed. However, we can also use things like speed profile and how they're accelerating or decelerating as another metric to kind of isolate those out in a decent way to be able to have because obviously you want to capture those different road users, because a pedestrian is going to be very different than a scooter, in my opinion.
Yeah, the attribution classification is always that's the holy grail of everything. Will, you want to go ahead and pull up the closing slide, and we'll give everybody updates on the upcoming subcommittee activities there. Excellent. And well, thanks to everybody. Thanks to these panelists. This was a really exciting topic. I think we'll be expounding on these topics probably more in the future. I feel like 5 years ago we wouldn't have even been able to talk about this. Just a reminder, the mid-year meeting the virtual mid-year meeting will be coming up Tuesday, August 19th at 2025. So watch for that. Be able to attend if you can. And then we do have 2 more planned conversations with colleagues, July 15th at the same time, and then October 21st. You'll notice that we don't have a topic there. So if you have some ideas or some work that you're doing that you want to share, contact myself, Will, or Nathan. We're always looking for great ideas. And then, of course, also it's never to really start thinking about next year's TRB annual meeting, which will be January 11th to 15th. And with that, I don't know if Nathan or Will, or if anybody else has anything you want to share before we sign off for the day.
Risha, did you want to say something? Your hand's still up. Yeah, thank you, everybody. This is really exciting. Bob, if you have a minute, you're working on pedestrian level of traffic stress, so you're still here. I wonder if that could help validate, if any of this LiDAR could help you with that kind of validation work.
Yes, that'd be helpful.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how models can use this, like, how a city like Nashville can use this, because the trailers are going to be moving around more and more, and I wonder if the trailer Vanderbilt can be used enough to where, oh wow, we have the same kind of story on all the arterials. So I'm excited about this. Hope to see you guys again. Thanks for joining.
Yes, maybe some collaborations. Well, thanks so much, everybody. We hope to see you in July, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.